Everyone, welcome back to my channel. I have Estella here with me today, and we're going to be talking about spirituality, but this time only Western spirituality. So I think it's going to be a bit different than the last podcast I did, and because I felt like, like speaking with Kashish was great, but like his kind of Eastern views of things, like I think us in the West, we're growing up in completely different surroundings, and I
Yes.
think we grow into different people as well for that. And also, what I notice is that we don't really have proper spirituality here in the West. It's like we're still looking for it. What do you think?
I don't really think that, at least in recent years, that we've had proper spirituality except for very mainstream religions such as Christianity and
Yeah,
Islam. And these are the kind of religions that, that mostly people practice them nowadays. But we don't actually have a spirituality that is sort of ethnic to
or that
Europe.
is like spiritual.
Yeah, yeah.
Because like if we consider like Christianity and Islam like spiritual, I still don't get what's spiritual about it. There's no like in the East, like you would have like the entire procedures and things to do.
Yes.
That would be very spiritual. In Christianity, is there anything like except for praying?
The closest I've seen to having practices or rituals is Orthodox Christianity. They have
Yeah,
these like very old rituals that they still do, So this is, I think, the remainings of this old type of,
pagan.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. So I think it resembles closely that is Orthodox Christianity, but Catholicism, except eating the flesh and drinking the
blood
body, the
of
blood,
Christ.
but still very pagan when you look at it.
Yeah. No. I see Christianity like and Islam actually also like having tons of remnants of the pagan stuff. But like what is spirituality actually? Like when I think about it, it's like what's the definition? Like what would be that for you when you think about it?
For me, is keeping your, how will I say this? It's a very interesting question. The way
Mm.
I would put it, what is spirituality for me? For me, is nourishing the other side.
Hmm.
Basically, for me, it's anything to do with the other side. So there's current reality and there's the other side.
Yeah.
So anything that we cannot see, we cannot fix physically, we can do in another realm or through spirituality. So for me, it's a practice of maintaining and nourishing the other side,
The spiritual side.
spiritual
The
side of you. Yeah, yeah,
non-material side.
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And what about you?
I'd say it's similar. I think it's like exploring your kind of extrasensory abilities and
That as well.
and
That's
and
actually
and
really good.
learning like things through them, and knowing more about yourself and about the reality of the world around you, and kind of like accepting that part into your normal life.
I like when you say like nourishing your extra sensory abilities, because
Yeah,
obviously we all have them, like some less, some more. So it's
yeah,
like definitely refining these gifts that we're naturally, we all have them and we're born with them, which is interesting because according to the theory of evolution, we shouldn't have these very sixth sensory abilities, because, for example, animals have them a lot. They're more, even though them being animals, they do have this like sixth sense or this knowing that apparently we as humans, even though they push the theory of evolution, but
yeah,
we're
yeah.
not supposed to be, to have these.
I was listening to some kind of podcast, and now I don't know the names. Maybe I'm going to have to research into this. But apparently, when the whole theory of evolution was made, there was another dude actually working on it that had a huge interest into paranormal, and but nobody ever wrote about this, and it is said like, oh, we're going to just get rid of this because we don't want this to disturb the theory of evolution.
Yeah.
And I think the humanity wasn't kind of ready for it because, yeah, when the theory of evolution kind of even was born, I think it was like a breath of fresh air because now like Christianity didn't have that much of a hold in schools and everything. So, but we kind of like didn't continue from there. Like, yeah, okay, let's look at evolution of species, and obviously that animals and humans also evolve, um, within the environment they are in because they have to adapt to it. But what about the other things?
The theory of evolution that's taught in schools, it's definitely it was a beginning to something, to a
Yes,
discovery of something, and it
yeah,
started off really well.
it's
Where,
valid. Like,
yeah, it's getting, so let's get to know our species from the beginning. But then unfortunately they never, I mean, they did dig deeper. It's just that they didn't dare to go as deep. Because,
yeah,
as you said, it would usurp certain bodies, certain government bodies, or certain, facts. There's a lot of money behind certain theories. There's a lot of funding that goes into certain areas. So
yeah,
obviously, if you say something that like defies an original theory, I did read that it will like defund you basically. So like the funding went into, like, it started off as a good idea. So I always say the European Union started off as a good idea, but
yeah,
because it started off with a good idea doesn't mean it continued as a good idea.
yeah.
So,
There is this. How would I say? If you're a scientist and you even consider spirituality or
mhm.
anything extrasensory, and immediately like you're discredited among the scientific community, and
Yeah.
that's still the way it is. That's, I think, the reason why the science didn't have any major breakthroughs in the last like 40, 50 years.
But
It's
what's interesting is that we're developing AI so much, which, when you think about it, when you think about the way a computer works,
Mhm.
it functions based upon frequencies and crystals,
Yeah,
so uh, it's something. So how come haven't we developed that other side, which is very much physical in some evidence?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Even like the birth of AI, in a way, it's like all the information, it's somewhere in the space. It's not like physical, you
It's
can't touch it.
nanotechnology. You can't see it.
Yeah.
Frequency, the way electricity is built, is pure frequency. It's,
Also,
you
what
know,
scientists noticed, which I think is remarkable thing, and I don't know why it's pushed aside so much, is that when you make an experiment, what they notice, if you have an idea what the result of the experiment will be, you affect it. And this is what a lot of scientists like started talking about, is like your thoughts like actually changing the experiment.
isn't that evidence enough? I mean, what's I find interesting, during, I think it was the Victorian era. I think around, definitely the end of the Victorian era, there was a lot of interest in spirituality,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
people were conducting seances, and they
Yes.
were,
Yeah.
and there was a lot of like actual experts trying to look at. I think the term, I'm not sure now, I might be wrong, but I think the term ectoplasm was
Yes.
actually present within that era.
Yeah.
So it started off. There was an interest to explain all these things, even because at the end of the day, I do believe it to be physics, metaphysics.
Yeah. 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 No, I think the time is for the science and spirituality to become one, and Eastern spirituality does it so good.
Hmm.
They do it
They
amazingly.
do,
Like
yeah,
when
yeah.
you talk with them, and and they always like mention Vedas and how, and that's all normal to them. It's like, yeah,
You mention energies, you mention stuff like that, and they're like, yeah, well, that's kind of part of our practice. Our
yeah,
whole family, we all, you must do that to keep the energy like in certain ways.
Yeah.
like feng shui, for example. I'm fascinated
Ayurveda.
by Ayurveda. It's a Shintoism in Japan as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Yeah. Yeah.
amazing because it's
Acupressure, acupuncture.
yes,
Come
yes.
on, where's the end? And we here in the West is like, no, no, no. You
It,
know, if you go to something like that, there's a high chance that your family is going to make fun of you and say, why don't you just
but
go to a normal doctor?
and that was brought up by Abrahamic religions.
Yeah.
Anything, even nowadays, I mean, you saw the comments I get on my YouTube and my Instagram or whatever. Anything I post or anything, or any, not just me, like anyone else that posts about anything to do with energies, entities, spirits, anything, even Eastern spirituality,
Yeah.
it's always deemed of the devil.
Yeah.
How come that Japan has Shintoism, or even in Hinduism, a lot of stuff like that are taught. And
Yeah.
I had
Yeah.
this discussion with, uh, sorry, I can't remember his name now. I
Kashish?
don't,
No?
Kashish. So
No.
you've talked about it with him in the podcast. So,
Yeah.
so how come that you don't come to Asia, or you don't come to India, for example, and you say, well, that's of the devil, because they're gonna laugh at you, you know?
They're going to laugh
Like
at you. They're going
imagine
to be
coming.
like, what are you, a peasant? Like,
Yeah,
come
what
on.
are you, a medieval peasant, basically, you know? And we in the West, we still get comments like that.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
have we, like, okay, you've developed computers, you've developed, like, life is so progressive, and you still refuse to acknowledge metaphysics.
Yeah, yeah, and
Why?
and to accept and this is, I think this is the most ridiculous part, because like if you look at Christianity, in its essence, it has this idea that there is a soul, and when you die, you go to heaven,
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
there's this whole spiritual world. But then when you need to like talk about it in physical life, they don't accept it. What?
When you have to talk about, for example, I have felt the presence of angels.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
that's the devil. That's a devil
No.
tempting you. It's
Hmm.
like, excuse me, you believe in afterlife? Yes, I do. So what are
But
we
not
talking about?
reincarnation. Uh.
So, like, okay, so you cannot, I don't know, how do you call the stuff that they put on the horses when they
Oh yeah,
pull a carriage, the
the thing
the
that you can't
thing,
look on the
whatever.
side,
Actually,
that the horse doesn't get.
the most people I met that were believers in Christianity and Islam, or even Judaism,
Yeah.
they're all like, really, okay, there's a God, which all of the religions talked about, all of the pagan worship belief, they all talk about one main source of whatever, or multiple.
Hmm.
So how come that you cannot see, you're so afraid to see? It's better to know, in my opinion, better to know the devil than to not. Better to
Mm.
know what's around you than be completely clueless and think, well, I'm not going to like pay attention to anything.
Yeah.
So it's like, and also the materialism that we have in Western society, which like fuels, obviously we're fueled by materialism so much that anything spiritual is actually, even I see nowadays spirituality getting mixed with so much materialism. It's almost like
Mm.
it's building a business that is nice on the outside, looks spiritual on the outside,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
once you get into that, like, there's not really much depth. Everything is rainbows and flowers, and spirituality is like big ups and downs constantly.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
And even like your normal Christian, like your normal Hinduist, for example, would still do yoga, would still go to an Ayurvedic, practitioner
yeah.
if he has heartburn or something, right? Or would explore different things and have rituals and offerings to God. But your normal Christian would do nothing, would go to church, wouldn't even would come there just to look how everyone else, what they're wearing, and
How much
give money to
they're giving,
the.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But
And
there's no like work on the body.
no,
You
there's
know,
no work on
you
anything.
can't just function spiritually and expect. Because as you said, in Hinduism they would practice yoga as well, in
Yeah,
Buddhism as well.
yeah,
So there has to be like a connection of both for it
yeah,
to work properly. If
yeah.
you're just up here,
It,
it's dangerous.
that's
It's not a ground,
mentally.
because you're
Yeah,
basically never grounding yourself,
yeah,
because you're always in prayers, like you're always praying. and you're not grounding it. So you're going somewhere up there, and you're actually becoming vulnerable,
Yeah, yeah,
because
yeah.
it's a work of, like, we're like machines, you know.
Mm.
We're built of the physical and the ethereal, the spiritual, you know. So yes, in I don't see in Islam or Christianity, or I mean, I don't know too much about Judaism, to be honest. I haven't really, I've read like bits and pieces of the Talmud, but I haven't really like
Yeah,
gone
I
into
mean,
that.
there's Kabbalah there,
Kabbalah there,
which,
yeah, yeah,
which,
which is a whole different story.
yes, yeah, which is they took it from the Egyptian Kabbalah, actually.
Well, there you go.
Yeah. If you look at the kind of history of it, it's from Egypt originally. But you see, like, and I think that is the reason why in Christianity there's so many cults,
Hmm.
and these cults are extremely dangerous because, like, if you're like growing up in community which does not allow you to use any kind of spiritual gifts, everything is of devil. If you're raised within a community that's repressing sexuality, which is usually happening in very kind of like radical Christian cults, if you're coming, from a place where you're not allowed to think for yourself and there's rules and you have to follow them, you become extremely dangerous to society. Like, and this is not spirituality as well. This is an ego thing.
It's pure control and
Yeah.
manipulation. You
Yeah.
know,
And I've seen people saying, I want to save you. I was like, wait.
the recent comment I got on my YouTube, I don't want you to go to hell. I want to save you the same way Jesus saved me.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like, how can you assume that I might have been already saved? How do you know that I'm not saved by my enlightenment and my realization? You know, like, it's bold for you to assume that I need saving,
Yeah,
you know?
and it's very egotistic to assume
Yeah,
you have the recipe for salvation as well.
exactly. Yeah,
And
yeah.
saved from what?
Yeah,
I- I-
saved from what? Like, am I not happy that I need saving? It's like, I'm actually curious. What was your first exposure with a so-called
Cult.
Abrahamic religion cult, let's say, or any
Yeah.
cult really? Because it can be anything. Can be pagan. I was exposed to a pagan cult, which I'm gonna talk about later. But yeah, I'm curious to see about your experience. Like, what
Um
kind of things
well,
did you experience?
I was raised Catholic, so my mom used to take me to church and
Mhm.
everything. So I was, in a way, deeply traumatized from the young ages because, like my mom wouldn't like talk to me about things, but then I was very much into reading, so I like to read a lot, and there was like not too many books that I could read, and I remember we went to the church, and my mom was obsessed with this kind of Capuchin order. I don't know. They were in my hometown, and she would bring me to talk with this priest, and like I can't say he was a bad guy, but he told me like, "Oh, I have something, for you," and it was like a little white book, specially made for kids.
Oh,
Yeah, and
okay.
I burned it at some point, but because it really deeply traumatized me.
Wow.
Um, it had a lot of things in it, but there was the whole section about sexuality and masturbation as well, and it was like awful. It was like, if you do
Really?
this, you're going to hell.
Wow. Okay, so it was an extreme
It was
book.
extra, and like I was like, wow, yeah, I'm going to hell. I was like certain, okay, yeah, I'm being whatever if I have any kind of thoughts that are not aligned with this book, um, then I'm being punished by the gods. And I had this awful, like this really traumatized me because I was thinking that I'm getting bad grades in the school because the god is actually punishing me.
This
And,
is
and this all
yeah.
came because of one little book. And I
Imagine
don't think
imagine
this
like,
was suitable for kids. I was 6, 7 years old.
okay, yeah, being 6, 7 years old, children have no business talking about sexuality
No.
until the hormones start. whatever, then
Especially not
obviously
telling them that
no,
this is sin.
no. And imagine basing your like whole thoughts and life on a little book.
Yeah.
How like limiting, must
I was
that
a
be?
very serious kid. So
Mhm,
when I took something, I took it very seriously. I'm still like that, you know. I was like, okay, there are rules here of what I need to do because I was
mhm.
always very spiritual. And I was like, okay, I need to pray before lunch. I need to pray before bed. Oh, I did everything that the book prescribed. Um, and I just felt awful all the time. And that was, let's say, my first experience of like being part of, let's say, this is like a very Catholic upbringing. And then there was another one with the Baptist church.
Mhm.
And luckily, I wasn't like an easy target, because I was very hot headed even then. I think I was like at the beginning of high school, and my friend, her whole family was into this Baptist church, and she invited me over for like a summer holiday, and the thing was very cheap. So my parents were like, okay, yeah, it's a church thing, it's okay. So we were there in the tents, and I remember up to like today, we had to draw a symbol that would represent us on the first day of the that retreat, and I draw a yin yang. And little did I know that this will really upset the guy, right?
Aquarius. That's Aquarius for you guys. Super rebellious.
And he was like, what is this? Like, why do you think this is a good representation of you? And I was like, well, in everything, it is like nothing is perfect. Like in
Mhm.
everything good, there's a little bit of evil, and everything evil, there's a little bit of good. That was
Yeah,
my understanding of that
yeah.
at that point. And he was like, no, this symbol is like bad because there is no such thing. God is the ultimate good, and there's no evil in him. And he was like, okay, I will accept this, but like you're gonna be here for 2 weeks and I'm gonna make you change your mind.
Oh.
And I was like, okay, sure. So if you make me change my mind, I
Mhm.
will correct it. And there was a couple of incidents on that retreat as well. So like I was around, let's say, 13 years old, and my dad packed me, one of those rubber dinghies, so I would just like chill on that on the ocean. And the guy called me in, and he told me I'm showing my butt to everyone on the beach.
Seriously.
I was like, I was like in a normal swimming suit, like it's not my fault that I look the way I look.
You're at the beach. I mean,
Yes. So that was another problem that I had with him. But then on the last day, they did some kind of ritual. And I'm saying like this was a ritual. So they started with this, I don't remember it really good, but it started to be really creepy. And during the ritual, it was like if you felt cold, then you have to like go downstairs and sign that you're joining the Baptist church. And there was something really weird with this thing because we all started to feel unwell at some point. We started to feel like guilty because of our sins, and it was something creepy. And even at one point I felt like I want to go and sign, but I was like, no, 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 like I don't want to have anything to do with this. But like I would say like 60% of the people that were sitting there while they were like chanting this stuff went downstairs and signed. It was so creepy.
so like you see, this is exactly what most cults do. They make you sign something off
Yeah, yeah,
under
yeah.
the guise of you're joining this group. But what I wanted to ask is, was there certain words being used or certain symbols that you remember seeing, whether on the floor or
I actually don't
with?
remember. I To be honest with you, I have this like mist surrounding this thing. It's almost like I have blurred memory.
They were probably using mantra. chance to
yeah,
hypnotize people
yeah,
to then
yeah,
sign the paper.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
it's very wow.
I
It's
was
very messed
uh,
up.
it was very messy.
Mhm.
It was probably at that point like the strongest kind of spiritual experience I had, because it was very confusing as well. But I didn't sign anything. I left the retreat. I didn't change the symbol either.
Mhm.
So they didn't manage to break me. But it's still weird when I think about it. And they would do this every year.
And you know what? So you basically had to put your name down on paper, and obviously
Yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
become part of them. And then was there like a way to annul this contract?
I'm not sure
Because
actually.
yeah,
I
because
don't
like
know.
it's so dangerous once you put
Hmm.
on. Like, we talked about it. You sign a contract spiritually, and then
And then you're met on your
yeah, exactly.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
that's you know, and
My
it's
candle is so weird. Look at it.
you know, oh, it's
Yeah,
actually huge now.
I don't wanna burn the house.
Let's see if we see something and smoke. You know, kind of. Sometimes it manifests very well on camera. I don't know. I think you claimed your space anyway, so nothing would show up anyway.
Anyhow, like that was extremely creepy. And but I was never a good how would I say target for the cults. I wasn't they didn't like me. So I thankfully I was safe.
Same. I was rebellious as far as I remember. Ever since I was a toddler, I must have been super rebellious, and you know, I'm the worst person to control. Like literally, like people hate me for not being able to control me ever. You
Yeah.
know, super. You know, sometimes it can be like I won't listen. You know, if someone tells me to do something, I'll have my mind on my
Same.
own, and I do things at my own pace, and I chose when to do things, and that's a recipe for disaster for cults because
Yes.
they want someone who doubts themselves,
Yeah.
and they want someone who is vulnerable. You know, you can have a person that's sure of themselves, but for example, they'd have like a tragic event or something bad happened to them. They lost a parent, a partner, something, and then they need outside validation that they're going to be able to go through whatever they're going through.
Yeah.
And it's understandable that people sometimes in this situation they seek some type of I guess something to ease their pain. You know,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
understand that, and I understand because I've been there myself, where I felt like maybe if I belong in this cult or this group, then my pain will be taken away by God or by the
Yeah.
gods, or you know, like it's a dangerous position that you sometimes put yourself in because you know, as you say, at the end of the day, look, what kind of feeling were you born with? Do you feel, you know? I always felt that even we had religion, you know, in Croatia, you have religion classes in
Yeah.
mandatory in elementary and secondary school, high school. You know, I wasn't a stranger to, even though I'm not baptized and we weren't church goers. You know, we had religion in school and we were praying and singing. And actually, my religion teacher, she was an old woman. She was used to
Mm.
be a nun, and
Oh.
she was a wonderful woman. She was so kind. She was one of the rare people within this circle that
Community.
was
Yeah.
actually she was actually so pure. I loved her. And I was so sad when she retired because I really loved classes with her and I loved the way she presented religion to us. She wasn't like shoving it down our throats, you know,
Mm.
but she was doing it in such a cute way that little children, we weren't talking about sex or you must not, you know, we were children. We were just taught about like these little songs and, you know, the just little kind of like stories about the Bible. And
Mm.
we used to watch the Son of Egypt. You know, I
I
actually loved
I
the movie.
love Bible
I
stories. Bible stories
Bible
are
stories of,
class.
and you know what? The Son of Egypt is my favorite cartoon, but the one from the 90s from
Oh,
Disney.
okay.
It's
Yeah, yeah,
I love the songs and I actually love the movie. But because, you know why? Because I loved it even since I was a kid because it reminded me of something.
Mm.
not of the current religion.
Mm-hmm.
When I
Mm-hmm.
saw the Egyptian culture, or
Oh.
I'll never forget the bush that is set on fire
Aha.
and
Uh-huh.
speaks to you.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
to me, that was so pagan. Like when you look at it,
Yeah.
like it's the
Burning bush.
elemental, burning bush and
Yeah.
elemental. And I was like, damn, this is crazy, you know? Or the powers to send plague. So pagan, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
To send
absolutely.
out plague, locusts, and disease and catastrophe. It's something that we witness, that we could be witnessing. Well, I'm actually drifting off the point too
But
much.
actually, when you say that, and there are so many things in the Bible that God does that are not good. They're kind of evil.
Yes,
Killing the firstborn sons. It's kind of evil, right?
it is. So killing innocent firstborn sons, bringing plague upon me. People that, I'm sorry, but they are born. Okay, I have to calm down because
I
I'm
mean,
very passionate about this.
destroying Sodom and Gomorrah. I'm sure
Yeah,
there was someone worthy to
to
stay
save.
alive.
There's no, I don't believe in any religion that, or any belief that is killing the innocent. I
Mm.
don't care, oh, but they're infidels. If you think about it,
Matter.
so my ancestors could have been Romans, they could have been
Mm.
ancient Greeks.
Mm.
So did they go to hell because they did not know the name of Jesus or the name of God? You know what I mean? It's like, doesn't, there
That
has to be, if there's a heaven on another side, it has to be somewhere where we all go, regardless of you being a Christian or you being a Wiccan pagan, or it has to be, or you just maybe choose where you go yourself at the end of
yeah.
the day, what
It's
you make it, I suppose.
I think those kinds of ideas that something is completely good is a very fertile ground for a very bad case of ego.
Yeah,
Because whenever you kind of like push the light side, the shadow side will grow as well. So you have all these Christian cults where they believe, that we're doing good, we're spreading the word of God, but in that attempt they will not choose the way to do it. They will just do anything that's needed, and you've seen that through history. Christians and Muslims are probably the most violent religions that ever,
and any belief that is repressing the feminine, how can you go about balancing, because obviously the sun or Ra or God is very, very masculine.
yes.
So how can you? That's what I don't understand. The religions don't take care of women at
No,
all. They
no.
don't take care of women. So
We're
how can you
property.
expect?
We're just property, these
So how can you
religions.
expect this vibration to be complete when you're only fueling one side, which is the masculine. So
I,
everything else will fall apart
I think
naturally.
this is by design.
Yeah.
I don't think this is a coincidence.
Mhm.
And when Christianity showed up, it made sure to destroy everything that
Mhm.
didn't suited their intentions. The priests wanted to have the ultimate monopoly
Mhm.
over everyone around them, and even for years, people would go to church, and the mass was in Latin, and people didn't speak Latin. So they were listening to all this rambling without even understanding a word.
If this is not about control, I don't know.
Of course it is.
Don't tell me it's anything else, because anything that, if you tell me that it's pure gaslight,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was.
you
I
know,
think it was Lutherans, Martin Luther, that said, "Okay, enough is enough. The masses in
yeah.
Latin are not doing anything good to the people coming to the church, and we need to translate the Bible to German because Germans need to understand what they're telling them in the church."
So imagine worshiping something and hearing preaching every day or every weekend or whatever, and you don't know what that's about. But you have to do it, because if you don't do it, then there's trouble.
I was
Like,
reading. I think I was reading. This was in a book about the witch burnings.
mhm,
Actually, that the masses would last around 4 hours. and it was in Latin, so people wouldn't understand what's happening even. So they would fall asleep. Of course they would, And then there was this guy that was in charge that had this big pole that would hit you with a pole if you nod off to sleep. And how do you hypnotize people? You make them fall asleep, and then you can implement things in their head without them even being aware of it.
And now what's happening? Centuries and centuries of what you just talked about. So imagine every single person getting hit by a pole, being burned alive, being imprisoned, tortured, whatever, ingrained in DNA, obviously. So now you have thousands of people in Western Europe being so afraid of anything that isn't that. And naturally so. I don't even blame them because they're so afraid.
Yeah,
Anything is devilry, anything.
yeah.
It's so engraved in them. It's
And you don't have any spiritual gurus as well to help you out
yeah,
on this way.
yeah,
Before in even Western pagan traditions, like in ancient Greece or Roman times, there was like actually people that knew
yeah,
how to do things, and then you could go to them and they would teach you. Or in the East, where you have the
yeah.
whole tradition of gurus that would actually help you, and that would tell you, okay, you're an ego now, you need to
Hmm.
stop. We
Hmm.
have nothing, so you have people
We
with
have
all these blockages, starting with spirituality and ending up in cults because they end up in ego eventually.
because even we actually talked about this as well in Eastern Europe. In every village, you used to have this magic man or magic woman.
It's usually a
But
woman.
who do you have now? So, for example, if if you have a case of a bad spirit coming in, okay, you can kind of try to call the priest, but the priest can't. He can clean the house technically, but can he advise what you have to do to? For example, if there's a case of you're born, unfortunately, you're a portal to
Mm.
certain things. Like where is that like shaman or that
They send you
witch
to
or
the
that
madhouse. They
they send
send
you?
you to the institution where they give you medicine so you don't feel
Yeah.
things anymore.
Actually, I was reading just a couple of days ago, or maybe I sent it to you. I can't remember now. But I was reading a report of a psychiatric working in a top psychiatric hospital, and he was kicked out because he actually told other psychiatrists and other medical professionals that he believes that um, some schizophrenic patients are actually just they're completely open
Yeah,
and there's no way to close that they're actually super gifted mediums
yeah.
that see that not only because some mediums they only see spirits, they see everything, bad and good.
And they can't separate these two
And
realities.
they can't because and he said like if only you'd have a very spiritual person or a guru that can come to you and say, look, this is this and this is that and what you're seeing right now is this, maybe people would have a bit of peace of mind. But no,
Mm.
instead obviously medication is given, which is medication does close down your, I would say it reacts on the part of the brain that
Yeah,
closes down the,
yeah.
I guess, extra sensory. That's why it
Sensory.
makes
Yeah.
people sleepy and lethargic, and so it closes down your
It shuts you
abilities.
down.
Obviously, but still, after because I knew a schizophrenic guy that was on very high medication. He was taking an injection once a week as well, and I would ask him, so does this medication stop you from seeing things? He's like, no. I said, so why are you on the medication? Well, it's just kind of it just well, you know what he said to me, and that actually really broke my heart. He said to me, "It doesn't stop me from seeing things. It just helps me not to give a shit."
Oh my
It's
god.
so sad. It's just numbing, so you can still see and hear things. It's just numbing you to not be scared and paranoid.
Mm.
But obviously, like imagine what's
But
and every village used to have that one person that even in Croatia, there's for example
yeah.
in Slavonia,
But
there's a lot of people like that
do you
still.
know why they started burning witches? There was one main reason, because like before, men were kind of kings and warriors, but women were the shamans, the spiritual people. The women were helping each other deliver babies, and they knew which herbs to take, and they were on the head of the spiritual side in the tribe. There was almost always a female shaman. or whatever that was in the Western Europe or Eastern. And when Christianity came about, because now they had men as the head of the spiritual orders, but every time when that man would challenge the woman that was the spiritual leader of community, she would outsmart them. So they got very frustrated. They didn't know anything about childbirth. They didn't know anything about herbs. They didn't know anything about anything, right? So that there was this like peasant woman that didn't know Latin, that didn't know anything, but she was better than them in every single way. So they had to burn them because they couldn't practice authority over the
Yeah.
community
So
because
it's not
nobody would
even that
listen to
there
them.
is a suspicion of devilry, like
Yeah,
not even that.
and
It's
this wasn't
that.
something I made up. This is something I read. This
Mhm.
is a fact.
That's so. Now what I'm thinking is that now we have an influx of Islam is on the rise. So we've gone. Okay, so I just can't believe that as species, I can't even believe that we need to have this conversation
Mm.
because thousands of years. Okay, we're kind of like we were able to not pay much attention to Christianity, even though there's thousands of cults and whatever. But now this is rising as well, and I'm
This is
thinking
more
like
dangerous.
it's actually more bloodthirsty.
Yeah, kind of most of the religions had, and if you look at the Sumerian times, this dates back from the way I was reading it in the 12th planet. Is originally sacrifices were made to feed the gods when they would visit. So to make a feast for the gods, for them to physically come and eat. But I think in the meantime, it was kind of forgotten why they're doing this. So it was still, even in the Bible, there's so many notions where the story of Cain and Abel um, is that you know that story.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
But basically, why God preferred Abel over Cain is because Cain was growing crops, so he was like a, how do you call it, like
Farmer.
a farmer
Yeah,
of a sort,
yeah,
but like he
yeah,
was just
yeah.
growing crops, so he wasn't farming animals. And
Hmm.
Abel was farming animals, and then they would sacrifice things to the gods, to the god. So Abel would sacrifice an animal and Cain would sacrifice the crops, and
Hmm.
God preferred Abel's sacrifice, the meat, right?
Hmm.
um, and Cain became very jealous in time, and also like he was the most loved by the father, so he actually killed Abel because of the jealousy, because he was both preferred by the god and the father.
So blood and flesh preferred more
The god,
by
yeah,
by the god itself.
yeah, yeah.
Actually,
So do
thank
do not
God.
do not bother to give me these fucking herbs.
Drink my blood and eat my flesh.
In
They
memory of me.
had to put. They had to replace bread. It's like we were like still
Yeah, I mean
and wine. We would have
Cain
still
tried to
consumed. Yeah,
put
yeah,
bread on the ritual in the on the
yeah.
altar. That didn't work. So I always remember when I was reading that story, I was like, he must have felt like, you know, shit, Cain. And
Well,
that's
naturally so, because
and then he was punished for it as well. But
yeah,
that
yeah,
wasn't,
praise.
imagine having two sons and then preferring one.
Hmm.
That's not a very good characteristic, right?
So
You would
really, you don't really see them as two equal souls,
mm,
each with their own.
but
I know we
if
have,
you're a
but
god, you should know
if you're a
better.
god, you shouldn't have human qualities,
Yes.
like very earthly, like, oh,
Hmm.
I don't like this person, I like prefer this is very like earthly.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah,
not, it's not really, it doesn't really, yeah, it doesn't make sense for a god, for
yeah,
sure.
yeah, yeah.
They're not at that level.
I always remember reading that story, and I was very confused. I was like, why would God? Wouldn't he be like just happy for someone to
Yeah.
like pray to him and give
Wouldn't
him
he be like,
like,
oh, he's gonna rule over plants and he's gonna rule over animals, you know? Like he wouldn't like take sides.
yeah. Yeah, it
For
was it
sure.
was so strange, but yeah, the element of sacrifice is, I think, omnipresent, and it's still done in the masses in a way.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you're eating your god and drinking his blood. Like, it
It's
is strange.
it is strange when you look at it, and people still do it, and they still think it doesn't originate from a very long time.
But if that's not a cult, what is?
Yeah, I mean, you saw the video I posted. I had actually, it's interesting. You know what's interesting, when you started mentioning your kind of experience, and you mentioned the age 13. And
Hmm.
that happened the same to me. Age
Wow.
13 as well. First
No.
exposure that I've ever had with a cult that I believe to be Jehovah's Witnesses. But
Hmm.
I'm not too sure because I have spoken to someone that was actually in Jehovah's Witnesses a couple of years ago. And I was describing the situation that I had, that I was invited for dinner and I was made sit at the head of the table. And it was 8 o'clock in the evening. They were trying to make me stay because they were only getting started. So, and this person that was experienced with Jehovah's Witnesses told me that that this is very unusual for Jehovah's Witnesses. That he's
Maybe
not
it wasn't
sure.
them. Mm.
Maybe it wasn't then. They definitely. I do remember that the woman that my mom knew, that she was definitely a Jehovah's Witness.
Uh-huh.
But the way this person that was actually that escaped a Jehovah's Witness cult, he actually said to me that it's very unusual. They never put women on a pedestal. They would never make a woman sit at the head of the
Yeah.
table.
Yeah.
They will never. They don't even allow women to work,
Mm.
like to have
Mm.
hold high positions. So he said to me, that is very unusual. I don't know what cult it was. Definitely Christian, because they were talking about Jesus and this, but it was very unusual the way I would expect them to have rules. For example, they kept me at this dinner. It was very late. I was only 13 as well. So why, you would expect them to
That's
have strict
creepy.
rules with
Yeah.
women and girls. And I saw a lot of teenage pregnancies as well, which is, I don't know if this is the norm. I'm starting
Is
to think they could
I
have
feel
been
like that's more like a Mormon
Mormon.
thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But maybe I got confused. Maybe they were more, and they looked very like plain, kind of like plain,
Mm-hmm.
dressed plain and stuff like that. I had this exposure, which it only lasted one evening, but it was a very bad experience, and I got frightened. I genuinely thought they would have like, I don't know. I don't even want to say this, but I wondered what would have happened to me if I stayed like there for a couple of more hours,
Yeah.
because it was getting very late.
They have a lot of history of like rape within
Yeah,
the
yeah.
Mormon
I
community,
don't know. I heard all sorts of stories, and as
especially with
you,
young girls.
yeah. Well, I don't know. Did they use? I don't even want to think about it. And the second exposure I had is exactly as yours, a Baptist. It's the church. They call it Adventistička crkva
God,
uh,
Adventist, I think.
Adventist Church of
Yeah,
Baptist Church, whatever. And
it's the
that
same
was
thing.
pretty weird as well. It
Yeah.
wasn't as weird as the Jehovah's or whatever they were, but I was pretty weird. I remember seeing a woman, a pregnant woman, getting baptized, and they submerged her for around 5 seconds. They submerged her in this, like
Oh
there was a
my
big
God,
this wooden bathtub, and they submerged her like for 5 seconds, and I was there just watching, thinking, oh my god, she's pregnant, is she gonna
baby,
like
like,
drown, poor
yeah.
baby, I was like, oh my god, is she gonna be okay? And then she came out and she was fine, but I just thought, and I could just feel, now I wasn't there long, but you know how it happened. They had this fitness group, and at the time I was around 18.
Oh
They
wow.
always do, yeah. They had this like youth. Obviously, it wasn't like kind of middle-aged people.
Yeah, it's like, oh, we
Youth
have
group,
all these
yeah,
activities for young
yeah.
kids. They need to, it's the same thing.
So
The summer
typical.
camp was the same
Yeah,
thing. Come on, like,
me and my sister, we saw, and she knew this woman that was leading like this fitness group, but there was an advertisement saying youth group fitness, and we actually, me and my sister, we went to that a couple of times, and I really liked it because I could actually see that the workouts were amazing. Like it was actually quite good, So, and the woman that was leading, she was really nice. Like she was kind of the cool chick, She was like
mm,
an ex she seemed to be like an ex kind of, an ex raver, and like, back in the days, like she looked like the woman that like rave and techno in the past, and now she converted or whatever. But she was really nice. She was very nice to us, and we were doing this like fitness every like once or twice a week, and then from the fitness that we only attended once or twice a week with no preaching about God, but it was only getting started, obviously, because
they pull
then
you in.
Before you know, you love these people because they're so positive and they're so friendly, and they're all young women there, And then they created a male youth group, fitness group. And then I invited my male friends to come and join it. You see how it works. And then they had like a cooking group, which is like I remember they were vegetarian. They weren't eating meat. I don't know if that's a norm with them. They're vegetarian.
I'm not quite sure.
But anyway, like they had this vegetarian cook group, and I thought, oh, that's kind of cool. I'd like to learn like how to cook and stuff. So I joined.
They play on this.
And the food, the food was amazing. And I thought, oh my God, these people not only they train us, they cook good food, they're super nice, and I was almost pulled in. But I always had this feeling that like, hang on a second, it is a church after all.
Yeah.
And I knew someone that actually entered this church later. This person joined the male fitness group. And I know this person joined the church. And I know that this person then left the church, and he now became an astrologer.
Okay.
I never really asked what happened, but I heard from someone that he left because it was getting too much, like too many rules. You can't do this, you can't do that, and then this guy goes and becomes an astrologer. It's actually exactly how it works. Like, with most people that escape cults, they just like try to find their truth and their like ways of doing things, So, but that was the second exposure, which is funny. The third exposure actually came in like my kind of later 20s. Well, not later 20s. I would say like mid 20s, like around 24 or so. And I said, okay, enough with this Christian stuff. Let's because I always consider myself to be to sort of have pagan beliefs more than anything. So I was like, okay, let's try and find a pagan group. And then the Order of the Nine Angles came.
Oh my God.
And I had no idea what I was like. I didn't go deep enough into that, but I think it only took me a year to realize how fucked up this is.
But you see, this is the reaction if you enforce a religion that you say where everything is completely good. The normal reaction that's going to happen to balance out the energies in the world is you're going to have cults that are going to be extremely evil, and they will play on the card of evil.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of, that's the missing link. That's the missing part of the puzzle in order to have balance.
It almost feels like you go from an extreme, a very Christian group, to a very, very dark group.
I've noticed that there's a lot of people that were raised in extreme kind of Christian situations where there were so many rules, and the way they rebel is by joining the opposites. Orders where they would be like, oh, you can be as sexual as you want, you can cause harm to people, there's no responsibility, there's nothing. So it almost felt like, oh, I am like reclaiming myself through this.
I actually knew a person that was in Jehovah's Witnesses and then became part of the Order of the Nine Angles.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised.
I don't think I have to comment on that.
I wouldn't be surprised at all, because it's very tempting to, when you're feeling like extremely kind of not allowed to express any part of yourself that is considered evil by the Christian church, to actually have a cult saying, oh no, these things are amazing, just go ahead. Of course you're going to go for it.
Another example of another Jehovah's Witness that actually left Jehovah's Witness and went to become a Freemason, and then ended up doing rituals where it was described to me directly that he had to put his hand over the Book of Solomon and pledge his loyalty to the Book of Solomon,
Oh my
because
God.
if not, they would saw his body in half. I'm sorry. That was actually, and he wasn't allowed to talk about this, but he told me that was actually part of the ritual.
My
And then
God.
he obviously he got so scared, and he's like, well, I can't pull out now. I did this ritual,
Mm-hmm.
and I can't go back now,
Mm-hmm.
because
Mm-hmm.
he actually kind of said, I think bad things will happen to me if I do. And I think he's still in the Masonic Lodge to this day. Scary stuff.
You
You
see,
know?
like I think we us here in the West, we just go from extreme to extreme.
Mhm.
There's no middle ground. There's no middle way, and I think that's so dangerous because both sides are wrong.
I mean that this is the once again the we can see patterns, with all of these, first love bombing, making you feel special,
Mhm.
validating you, getting you in, you're signing something so you
Yeah.
can't go back. And then, they just take over your whole life. I never want ever anyone to have such control over me. I would
Mhm.
rather like on it, and I know this is gonna sound extreme. I mean, sorry, I'm a Scorpio moon. I will be extreme and fatalistic, but I would literally kill myself in front of these people rather than have someone take away my freedom. No way, But under
Any
the guise of some god that's gonna judge me and
no,
hurt me. No, I'm
no,
sorry. I
no.
did not come to this world to be subjugated, at all.
uh, it's unfortunately like I think us in the West, like Europe, America, mostly like Americas. So even the both continents, like um, even if you're not like born into a very Christian family or a very Muslim family, the surroundings are just like you're growing up in a society that was built partly by the church, and you're growing with this Christian guilt that surrounds your sexuality. You're growing up with not being able to reclaim your self-worth because thinking like good about yourself is almost a sin. So there's a lot of things, like us, our souls naturally want to evolve. And then like if you would be in the East, you would be able to talk with someone about that. But here in the West, there's that's why that people are so like easy to be picked by the cults.
And then there's I don't know, Christian counseling, I think, but it's
What did they
basically
tell you?
telling you, they don't tell you, they tell you pray and everything will be fine, like,
It's a
oh, my
delusion.
marriage is falling apart, that's fine, just pray together. And
It's a delusion.
like, you know I mean, I don't know, but that, and then you have obviously psychology and you have therapy, which is which is based a lot on the physical. I think, like,
Yeah.
oh, doing, if you do mindfulness every single day, you keep a diary, or you breathe, you drink some water, you walk. I'm sorry, with all due respect to any therapist or psychologist that might watch this, it's just not enough.
No,
It's not enough to
there's
drink water and to have a walk and to breathe deep and sleep well. Obviously, it's a huge factor, but
no.
what about the spiritual help that we need? Like, and I'm not talking about just pray and everything will disappear. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
what if you're having, unfortunately, you're having a case of a poltergeist, a haunting. You're
Mm.
having an entity attached to you.
Hmm.
Who's gonna like come and heal you from that? Because that can cause a lot of disease as